Hello, my name is Dr. Yuling Lee, and I'm Director of School of Education Graduate Programs at Trinity Western University in Canada. In this video, I explore how complexity thinking may open up new ways of viewing and analyzing complex educational issues. In particular, I share how a network of interdisciplinary actants within curriculum theory, pedagogy, and architecture have informed the complexification of my own teaching. Complexity theory has been increasingly applied to the study of teaching and learning. In particular, the application of complexity theory to education has provided a rich conceptualization to help make sense of the interactions and behaviors of both teachers and students in classrooms. Bill Dahl, a curriculum theorist, proposed complexity as one of the perspectives to engage in educational discourse. His 5 C's framework presents a pedagogical experimentalism through dialogical encounter with one another. I adopt Dahl's framework and his proposed posture of inquiry to reflect an orientation towards curiosity, openness, and the willingness to take risks in teaching and learning. Given the complexity of the educational landscape and the evidence that many teachers do not have a praxis of inquiry, how might we go about fostering this pedagogical approach? Well, the 5 C's are a playful framework proposed by Dahl, which consists of 5 interdependent conceptual actants. They are complexity, kareri, cosmology, conversation, and community. Let's explore each of these components in more detail and discuss how they can impact teaching and learning. First, kareri refers to the process of reflecting on and engaging with one's own experiences and values as a way of shaping and enriching the educational experience. Second, complexity refers to the idea that education is a complex system that involves multiple interdependent factors. These factors can include emergent pedagogy, social and emotional factors, and the philosophical approaches to knowledge. Third, cosmology includes the broader cultural and philosophical beliefs that shape educational practice, especially if consideration is the idea of creativity. Fourth, conversation, which emphasizes the importance of ongoing dialogue and collaboration among teachers, students, and other stakeholders in the educational process. And finally, community, which emphasizes the importance of understanding education as a collective endeavor that involves multiple stakeholders and institutions. Kareri. This is the infinitive form of curriculum. In curriculum studies, Bill Pinar conceptualized kareri as a framework for the autobiographical reflection on educational experiences that ultimately shape an individual's self-understanding in our society. Pinar's kareri approach involves 4 main stages: regressive, progressive, analytical, and synthetical. In the regressive stage, learners reflect on their past experiences and identify the key themes and patterns that have shaped their lives. In the progressive stage, learners imagine possible futures and consider how they might use their experiences to create the futures they want. In the analytical stage, learners critically examine their experiences and consider different perspectives and interpretations. And finally, in the synthetical stage, learners bring together their reflections and insights to create a new understanding of themselves and the world. Kareri is essential because it allows teachers and students to connect their own personal experiences to the larger context of their education. By engaging in this reflective process, teachers and students can develop a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them, which can enhance their motivation and engagement in the teaching and learning process. Complexity is especially important for the educational discourse because it helps us recognize that education is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. Instead, we need to recognize and respond to the diverse needs and backgrounds of our students in order to create an effective learning environment. Complexity represents a dynamic and self-organizing process in which we exist, we inhabit and empower ourselves. Within this process of our involvement in the world, we are in a constant state of reorganization and change. Davis and Sumera use this image to represent the nestedness of complex unities. Not only are complex unities composed of smaller components, the little circles, but there are relationships and interactions among the components that give rise to new structural and behavioral possibilities. Davis and Sumera further suggest that in complexity-oriented perspectives, objective knowledge and subjective understanding are intertwined in nested and co-implicated dynamics. Therefore, complexity theories of collected knowledge and individual knowing not only redefine these phenomena as inseparable from one another, but they follow similar evolutionary patterns, despite operating on vastly different timescales. In the classroom, complexity thinking prompts attention towards possible intermediary levels of complex coherence that occurs between subjective understanding and objective knowledge. These intermediary levels can be described within the domains of curricular structures or classroom collectivity. For example, in teaching and learning math in school, there are categories of knowing that are usually treated as dynamic within the level of subjective understanding and classroom collectivity, while curriculum structures and mathematical objects are portrayed as categories of knowledge and treated as stable. Instead, educators should consider classroom collectivity and curriculum structures in terms of complex phenomenon. This way, fluidity and flow would characterize complexity thinking and learning. And so we perceive a pedagogical emergence as an ongoing emergence connecting the content knowledge, our awareness, and gratitude for our connection with others, and the cosmos. Cosmology is important because it helps us recognize that our educational practices are not developed in a vacuum, but are shaped by broader cultural and philosophical beliefs about the nature of knowledge, the role of education in society, and the relationship between individuals and the larger world. More specifically for Dahl, the cosmos is creative in its being. In this statement, Dahl assumes that the universe in its very soul and spirit is creative. Creativity is the universe's distinguishing characteristic. Such an assumption has strong philosophical, educational, and designerly implications. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes creativity as a process by which a symbolic domain in the culture is changed. According to this view, creativity results from the interaction of a system composed of three elements: a culture that contains symbolic rules, a person who brings novelty into the symbolic domain, and a field of experts who recognize and validate the innovation. So in our educational cosmos, there is a everyday creativity. This is existent in both teachers and students. And this has three important implications. First, we must legitimize teachers and students' own procedures, their choices, and actions as an outpouring of their creativity. Second, we should help design a curriculum framework that is fluid and complex that can be enacted to support these local actions. And finally, these emergent teaching and learning models are unique to each teacher, student, and classroom. And so we should laud them for their distinctive expression of creativity. For teachers are experts in teaching and learning, and the very act of teaching is one of creativity. Conversation. This component is essential because it allows us to foster deeper understanding of the other. Bill Pynar describes a primary educational commitment as the ongoing ethical engagement with alterity. That is, there is a necessary ongoing dialogue and collaboration with others so that we can learn from one another and grow in our teaching and learning. For example, Teresa Strong Wilson proposes that teachers can have ethical encounters with themselves and have ethical encounters with counter stories in the classroom. Strong Wilson invites teachers to consider counter stories that address the history of otherness and raise issues of social justice with the need for educators and their students to reflect on their sense of social responsibility. Strong-Wilson describes how in Canada, teachers engage in teaching the history of residential schools, which is a politically loaded and complex topic. And yet, in dealing with this subject, she proposes that we can sit adjacent to one another as teacher and student in authentic conversation and support ethical encounters through the complexities of these issues. From the ethical encounter and conversation, we arrive at community. For Bill Dahl, this is a dialogic community. Dahl cites Gadamer, where what is most essential to our being in the world is that we are dialogical. The essence of our being is to have interactions with others in a community. This a priori characteristic is important because it helps us recognize that education is not solely about learning content knowledge. The emergent processes of teaching and learning are the frameworks for our educative agenda. Thus, educative goals, plans, procedures, purposes, evaluations should all come from this reframing of the dialogic community. One example of a dialogic community is when a teacher creates an intentional community of practice in the classroom. The teacher can enact the community of practice around reading comprehension by introducing a new reading strategy and modeling its effective use. The students can then practice the strategy in pairs or small groups, with the teacher providing feedback and support. The students can continue to share their experiences and collaborate to develop new ways to use the strategy. Through this process, they can develop a community of practice in which they share knowledge, solve problems together, and support each other's learning. This approach fosters more effective and meaningful development of reading skills compared to independent work. In my research, I build on Dahl and Pynar's work within complexity and curriculum studies. Curriculum, as educators experience, is a complicated conversation. It can be understood as a guide, plan, or course of study. Curriculum can be a subject area, a discipline, a way of knowing, a plan for action. It evokes images of circles or cycles, spirals, teachable moments, web of related concepts, ideas, and activities. Really, everything that happens in and around school or involving learning can be understood as curriculum. In my own work, I have explored the Greek and Latin origins of curriculum in order to complexify and contribute to this conversation. Along with Stephen Petrina, we have discerned 4 Greek and Latin origins of curriculum: cursus studiorum, curriculum vitae or currere, curriculum mentis, and curriculum artis or currus igneus. First, cursus studiorum is translated as course of study. This is the most typical interpretation of curriculum, and we can see it as schools plan out their activities and their learning for the entire year. Second, curriculum vitae or currere is translated as career and works, experience, journey, life, run, race, autobiography. Owing much to Pynar's developmental work, the image is based on the ancient racetrack, and we can see how running the race is very much aligned with what it means as careere. Third, curriculum mentis. It is the sphere or extension of the mind. In our technological age, it is especially appropriate to explore how different technologies such as AI, like ChatGPT, can be appropriately or inappropriately used as extensions of our thinking. Lastly, curriculum artis or currus igneus is translated as carriage, chariot, arenas, circuses, infrastructure. These are technologies or architecture, and we can see from, for example, the ancient Roman Colosseum, interesting technological innovations as well as pedagogical considerations and features on how to learn and express oneself. I believe these 4 tracings of curriculum show how education is deeply intertwined with design, technology, and architecture. At the very least, part of the important conversation in education is discerning how to create effective learning environments, which includes questions about the design and physical environment in which learning occurs. I hope this video has been helpful for you in seeing how the complexification of teaching can contribute to your own thinking. I look forward to seeing your comments and hearing more about your areas of expertise so that together we can assemble a network of interdisciplinary actants in order to apply education in a complex world. Thank you.